This story happened a few years ago when my wife was pregnant with our first child. It was supposed to be a moment of happiness and anticipation, right? But things didn't go quite as we expected that night. I remember it like it was yesterday, and what happened has never left my mind. We were at home, relaxing. It was around 6 p.m. when my wife started complaining about some stomach pains. Nothing too strong at first, but I was already on alert. She, in her way, said it must be just normal discomfort, that the baby wasn't ready to come yet. There were still a few days left according to the doctor. I tried to stay calm, but deep down I felt something was wrong. The hours passed and I just kept an eye on her. Tried not to seem worried, but I was. By 10 p.m. the pain started getting more intense, and this time she herself realized it was no joke. Her belly would tighten and relax, and I saw that the baby was ready to come. Right then, I said we had to go to the hospital immediately. Our house was far from there, like 40 minutes by car, and I knew we couldn't risk it. I rushed to the garage, started the car, and helped her into the back seat. My heart was in my throat just thinking about getting there in time. It wasn't just for the baby, it was for her too. I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. I started the car and took off quickly, but trying to stay controlled so I wouldn't mess up. About 10 minutes into the drive, I started hearing a strange noise coming from the engine. It was a continuous sound, like something was loose inside, but I didn't have time to stop and check what it was. My mind was focused on my wife, on the pain that kept getting worse. I thought it was just my paranoia, so I kept driving. The road was almost empty, which was good because I could speed up without worrying about much traffic. But as time went on, her situation just got worse. The contractions were coming faster, and I knew the baby wouldn't wait much longer. The silence in the car was only broken by her groans of pain and the engine noise, which seemed to get worse. I wanted to believe everything would be fine, that we'd make it to the hospital in time. Then, at a sharp curve in the road, I saw something that left me completely stunned. Up ahead in the middle of the road, there was a man lying down. He was face down, right in the middle of the road like he had been hit by a car. I didn't have time to think. The car was going too fast. I tried to swerve, but the curve was too tight and I lost control. I managed to dodge the guy, but ended up crashing straight into a tree on the side of the road. The impact was hard. My head hit the steering wheel, and for a few seconds, everything was a blur. My vision was fuzzy, but the first thing I did was look at the back seat. My wife was groaning in pain, but she seemed okay, no serious injuries. She was lying there with her hands on her belly, worried only about the baby. I got out of the car, stumbling, my head throbbing to check the state of the vehicle. The hood was all crushed in, there was a bit of smoke coming out, and the engine was messed up. But what intrigued me the most was when I looked at the road, looking for the man who had been lying there. But he wasn't there anymore. I walked up and down, looked at the sides of the road, but the guy had vanished. There was no one. No trace of blood, no sign that anyone had been there. The first thing that came to my mind was that I was seeing things. Maybe it was the stress or the hit to my head, I don't know. But the fact is, I saw that man, I swear I did. He was there lying on the asphalt, but now he was gone as if he had never existed. Confused, I got back into the car. My hands were shaking, but I needed to get my wife to the hospital. She was groaning in pain, and I knew I couldn't waste any more time. I got in and tried to start the car. Luckily, the engine still worked even though it was all messed up. I thanked God and kept driving, now much slower. On the way, my mind was spinning with questions. Did I really see a man lying there? Or was it just in my head? I was so worried about my wife that I could have imagined the whole thing. I asked her if she had seen anyone on the road, but she was so focused on the pain that she hadn't noticed anything. She just wanted to get to the hospital. Thank God we made it to the hospital in time, and the baby was born healthy. It was a huge relief, but that episode on the road wouldn't leave my mind. The next day, after we were discharged, we went back home. I made sure to take a different route. Didn't even want to get close to that curve again. Something about that road wasn't right, and to this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Since then, every time I pass by that stretch, I remember what I saw, or what I think I saw, Nothing like that has ever happened again, but it's one of those things that stay with you. Every time I remember, I ask myself, was that real? I was heading to Las Vegas on a Friday night, and I remember it well because I had just gotten some time off work. I used to work as a manager at an auto parts store back then. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. My wife and I had planned to spend the weekend there. We did that from time to time, just to escape the routine, try our luck at the machines, eat somewhere different, and take a break from our worries. That night, she couldn't come with me because her boss asked her to cover a colleague's shift, so I decided to go alone. I even thought about waiting, but I knew that if I didn't go that night, I might end up canceling the trip. I filled up the tank, grabbed a few water bottles and a bag of chips, and hit the road. Everything was normal, that good feeling of freedom, you know? The road was calm, with barely any cars passing me. The songs on the radio were kind of boring, but I kept switching stations until I found something decent. Around 10 at night, I was already in the most deserted part of the route. That stretch of road is just trees on both sides, with nothing around, no streetlights, nothing. That's when, all of a sudden, I saw something strange on the side of the road. Way up ahead in the distance, there was a man. He was walking slowly with his head down, wearing white clothes. I thought it was odd. Who the hell walks on that road, especially at that time? I thought about stopping, checking on him, seeing if he needed help, whatever. But as I got closer, I started realizing something was really off. The guy didn't seem solid. I know that sounds weird, but it was like he was appearing and disappearing at the same time. Like a hologram, you know? He'd walk and fade, then show up again. I don't get scared easily, but that caught me off guard. And it wasn't one of those situations where you see something out of the corner of your eye and think you're imagining things. No, I was seeing that man with my own two eyes right there on the side of the road. At that moment, I didn't think twice. I hit the gas and took off. I didn't look back, didn't try to figure out what it was. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I gripped the wheel tight and the engine roared. The car seemed angry, or maybe it was me trying to forget what I'd just seen. But the image of that man wouldn't leave my head. As I kept going, the silence in the car started bothering me again. The road was still empty, no cars passing by, and I started wondering what the hell that was. I tried to remember every detail. It was a man, I was sure of that. He looked to be around 40 or 50 years old based on his build, but the face, I couldn't really see it. All I know is he was wearing white clothes, simple ones like those hospital gowns or something. The thought of stopping and trying to understand crossed my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. We hear stories all the time about weird things on the road. Everyone knows someone who's seen something strange, but you never think it's going to happen to you until it does. I just wanted to get to Las Vegas, check into the hotel, and forget about it. When I finally arrived, it was already past midnight. The first thing I did was park the car and take a deep breath. My head was spinning, trying to process what I'd seen. I went to the hotel room and called my wife. She asked how the trip was, and I almost told her what happened. But I ended up saying everything was fine. I told her the road was calm, that I arrived with no problems. The truth is, I didn't want to sound crazy. My wife's cool, but she's pretty skeptical about these things. She'd either laugh at me or think I was too tired and imagining stuff. The next day, I met up with a buddy of mine. He was in Las Vegas too, by coincidence, and we grabbed a beer together. While we were talking, the story from the night before came back to my mind, and again, I almost told him. But then, I thought twice. I didn't want to sound like an idiot, so I kept it to myself. I just said the trip was long and that I needed to relax. After that weekend, I went back home, and life went back to normal. But the scene of that man on the road never left my mind. Every time I drive alone at night, especially on more deserted roads, I find myself thinking about it. I've even searched online to see if anyone else saw something similar in that area, but I never found anything. I still don't know what that was. It could be that I saw something supernatural, Or maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me because of the exhaustion, the tension of driving alone for so long. But one thing I'm sure of, I saw the man. He was there. And the way he kept disappearing and reappearing didn't seem like something from this world. These days I avoid driving at night in isolated places. Life has gone back to normal. My wife doesn't have a clue about this, and I've never told anyone. But every time I think about that man on the side of the road, I wonder if it was real, or if my mind was just messing with me.